Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Now let's define what is an event. So an event is a subset of the sample space of a random experiment. So as events are subsets of sample space, so we can use the basic set operations such as unions, intersections and complements to form other events. Okay. So this is something which you all are aware of, all these set operations. So a subset of sample space is called an event, and normally you can denote it by any capital alphabet, normally E1, E2. And the union of two events, E1, E2, is the event that consists of all outcomes that are contained in either of the two events. This is something which you already know. The intersection of two events is the event that consists of all outcomes that are contained in both the events. And complement of an event in a sample space is the set of outcomes that are not in the event. So two events, E1 and E2, let's say, are said to be mutually exclusive if they have nothing in common. That is, their intersection is a null set. So this is something which you already know, but it is just to refresh those because we are going to use these things throughout the course. Let's take an example. Let's just expand the previous example of wafers conforming to quality criteria or not. So we know that our sample space had 4 elements, YY, YN, NY, NN. Now suppose let us define our event 1 known as E1 as the set of all outcomes for which at least one part conforms to the required specifications. Okay, then we know that there will be only 3 points in that event, that is yes, 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 no, or no, yes. Okay, now we again define another event E2 where none of the parts conform to the required specifications. Then it has only one element, no, both of them failed the test. So after we define our events, we can generate new events like union, intersection, a complement and all that. This is a very simple example so that you understand the concept of sample space and the event. Now once you know what are the outcomes of a random experiment, it is very useful to associate probability to each outcome, like likelihood of each outcome. Okay. So probability is used to quantify the likelihood or chance that an outcome of a random experiment will occur. Let us say the chance of rain today is 30%. It is a statement that quantifies our feeling about the possibility of rain. Right? And this number can vary from individual to individual. So the likelihood of an outcome is quantified by assigning a number from 0 to 1. This is something which you already know. From 0 to 1 to the outcome, or a percentage from 0 to 100%. And we know the higher numbers indicate that the outcome is more likely and lower numbers indicate that it is less likely. And 0 indicates that the outcome will not occur and 1 indicates that an outcome will occur with certainty. So now how do we assign probability to these outcomes? So if we pursue a research question that involves using a sample to draw inferences about some large population, we need to answer the question how likely it is or what is the probability. Therefore, we need to understand probability, how do we assign probability, what are the rules and the models. So the rules of assigning probabilities, one is which is not in practice is a subjective approach. Okay. So our subjective probability or degree of belief is our thoughts, right? It is what we feel about and it varies from person to person. Different individuals will no doubt assign different probabilities to the same outcomes. Now another interpretation of probability is based on the conceptual model of repeated replications of the random experiment. The probability of an outcome is interpreted as the limiting value of the proportion of times the outcome occurs in n repetitions of the random experiment, provided that the value of n is quite large. Okay. Now suppose I toss a coin. You say, okay, the probability of getting head is 50% and tail is also 50%. But you never know. How do you know that? Suppose I toss a coin 10 times, it's always possible that I get head 7 out of 10 times. So then that probability becomes 0.7. But that's not true because here n is only 10. So this interpretation, please remember what the frequency interpretation says, that the probability of an outcome is the limiting value of the proportion of times the outcome occurs in n repetitions of the random experiment, where n increases beyond all bounds. So what does it mean? Suppose if we assign probability 0.2 to the outcome that there is a corrupt pulse in a digital signal. Okay, suppose there is a transmission of signal and 0.2 is the outcome that there is a corrupt signal. So what we interpret is that if you analyze many pulses, approximately 20% of them will be corrupted. That is what interpretation. So this example provides a relative frequency interpretation of probability. The proportion or the relative frequency of replications of the experiment that result in the outcome is 0.2. And also we know that probabilities are chosen so that the number of the probabilities, sum of the probabilities of all outcomes in an experiment add up to 1. This convention facilitates the relative frequency interpretation of probability. So now we know that probabilities for a random experiment are often assigned on the basis of a reasonable model of the system under study. So one approach is to base probability assignments on the simple concept of equally likely outcomes. Okay. So like when you roll a fair dice. So all the outcomes, namely 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are equally likely. So here the probability associated with each outcome would be 1 by 6. Now let's just expand by taking just another example. So we select a sample of 3 wafers, semiconductor wafers from a large production lot of wafers in semiconductor manufacturing. Okay. So this is a typical example which we had repeated previously. So we just expand that. Okay. So to make good decisions, an analysis of how well a sample represents a population is clearly necessary, right? So if the lot contains defective wafers, how well will the sample detect this? Okay, that is our question. How can you quantify the criterion to detect well? Basically, how can we quantify the risk of decisions based on samples? Right. Furthermore, how should samples be selected to provide good decisions, ones with acceptable risks? So probability models help quantify the risk involved in statistical inference, that is the risk involved in decision making process. Supposedly a production lot contains 25 wafers. If all the wafers are defective or all of them are good, clearly any sample will generate either all defective or all good wafers, right? However, suppose only one wafer in the lot is defective. So out of 25 wafers, one is defective. Then a sample might or might not detect the wafer. Suppose the sample is of size 3 and you select 3 out of those 25 wafers, your sample might or might not include the defective one. So probability model along with a method to select the sample can be used to quantify the risks that the defective wafer is detected or not detected. Okay, and based on these analysis, we can really take decisions about the size of the sample. Okay. So assume that the same size sample such as 3 wafers is selected in the same manner from each lot. The proportion of the lots in which defective wafer is included in the sample, or more specifically the limit of this proportion as the number of lots in the series tends to infinity, is interpreted as probability that the defective wafer is detected. Okay. So a probability model is essentially used to calculate this proportion under reasonable assumptions for the manner in which the sample is selected. And this is fortunate because we do not want to attempt to sample from an infinite series of plots. More importantly, this probability provides valuable quantitative information regarding any decision about the lot based on the sample. So now that the probability of an event has been defined, we can collect the assumptions that we have made concerning probabilities into a set of axioms that the probabilities in any random experiment must satisfy. These axioms ensure that the probabilities assigned in an experiment can be interpreted as relative frequency and that the assignments are consistent with our intuitive understanding of relationships between relative frequency. For example, if an event A is contained inside an event B, that it is a subset of event B, then we should know that the probability of A is less than or equal to the probability of B. So remember, these axioms do not determine probabilities. Okay, the probabilities are designed based on our knowledge of the system under study. However, these axioms enable us to easily calculate the probabilities of some events from knowledge of the probabilities of other events. Okay, so we have three axioms and we all are aware of these three properties. So like the properties of the event, the probability of event, it has to lie between 0, 1 is equivalent to the requirement that the relative frequency must be between 0 and 1. Then the property that the probability of sample is 1 is a consequence of the fact that an outcome from the sample space occurs on every trial of an experiment. So you will get some outcome, right? And that is obviously included in the sample space. So hence the relative frequency of sample space is 1. Now property 3 implies that if the events E1 and E2 are mutually exclusive, that is they have no outcomes in common, the relative frequency of outcomes in E1 union E2 is the sum of the relative frequencies of the outcomes in E1 and E2. So the probability can be written as such. Okay. Now let's go to something called conditional probability. Okay. So the way it is defined, this is something which you all are aware of, but let's refresh it. The conditional probability of an event F, given that an event E has already occurred, so that is the condition, is denoted by probability of F, given that E has already occurred, is the ratio of the P E intersection F by PE. Okay, provided that P is greater than 0. Now let's try to understand this. Now suppose in that thin film manufacturing process, the proportion of parts that are not acceptable or are defective is 2%. However, the process is sensitive to contamination problems. If you knew that during a particular shift there were problems with some filters which used to control the contamination, we would access the probability of a part being unacceptable as higher than 2%. Okay. So it can be interpreted as the relative frequency of event F among the trials that produce an outcome in event E. So you can take this example. Suppose, just expanding that example, we have 400 samples which we can classify as defective and having surface contamination. Remember, all the samples which have contamination need not be defective, but out of them, you can have samples where you don't have a lot of contamination but they are defective. So you have this table where all the numbers are given. Now let's calculate the probability of a defective sample. So you can see that the number of defective samples are 28, total number of sample is 400. So the probability is 28 by 400. Now you calculate the probability of defective samples provided that they have surface contamination. So you will see that it is 10 and the total number of samples with surface contamination is 40. So the probability is 10 by 40. Clearly you can see that this probability is higher than the original probability of estimating the defective samples. So once you understand these conditions, you can calculate the probability. Okay, this is something which is known. Now let's go to the multiplication rule. So what it suggests that you can just generalize the expression of the conditional probability. So you can say that the intersection of it is actually the probability of the intersection of two events. So intersection of two events, let's say E and F, can be expressed as a product of the conditional probability of observing F provided E has occurred and the probability of event E, or vice versa, conditional probability of observing the event E provided F has occurred times the probability of event F. So then comes the total probability rule. So this is quite simple, because for any two events E and F, one can express event E as the union of two things. Now what are the two things? Intersection of E and F and intersection of E and F complement. So this is indirectly saying that the value to be in event E, it must be either in both E and F or be in E and not in F. So as EF and EF prime are mutually exclusive sets, we can write, okay, probability E as the probability of E intersection F and the probability of E intersection F prime, because E intersection F and E intersection F prime are mutually exclusive sets. And then this intersection part we can expand as per conditional probability rules. So the above expression can be generalized for K mutually exclusive and exhaustive states. So if F1, F2, Fk are K mutually exclusive and exhaustive sets, then you can write the total probability as the sum of the probabilities of these mutual exclusive sets from your axiom number 3. And what are these probabilities? These are the intersection of the event which you want to study with the mutually exclusive sets. And from this we can also deduce the Bayes theorem. So if E1, E2, Ek are K mutually exclusive sets and F is any event, then the conditional probability of observing E1 provided that F has happened is given by the mentioned expression. Now let's talk about independence of events. Okay. Now what do we mean by two independent events or independence of events? So broadly saying that when we say the two events are independent, we say that the occurrence of one does not influence the occurrence of other. And mathematically, we can write the conditional probability of E provided that F has occurred is the probability of seeing that event. So the occurrence of F, event F, does not influence the occurrence of E. Okay. So that means the intersection of E and F can be written as product of the individual probabilities. So these are the basic probability rules which you already knew, and we have just refreshed it because we are going to use these rules in the entire discussion of this course. We will utilize these as tools to calculate probabilities associated with random experiments. So the message from this class is, we know about the importance of statistical analysis, and in the process we define the two broad types of statistics, namely the descriptive and inferential statistics. And then we talked about random experiments, and in the course we also learnt about how to define sample space, how to define events. We also discussed about population and sample, how samples are used to draw conclusions about the populations. We know about parameters and statistics, and we talked about why probability is important, as we need probability rules to assign probabilities with each outcome of a random experiment. So with this typical definitions, we are now ready to explore the random variable. Okay. So in the next class, maybe we'll start about We'll learn a little bit about descriptive statistics. So again, this would be like a refresher. We'll talk about the various methods of presenting the data and various methods of summarizing the data. And this will be followed by random variables. So thank you very much.